Yeah, welcome to your weekend preview. Monster Energy AMA Supercross headed to Philadelphia for the second year in a row. Stadium is the home of the new Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles. And the story is going to be the weather and the clock. Probably going to be a story about the weather with all the open stadiums in the springtime throughout the rest of this championship, especially with the Foxborough mud race clear in the rear view. But I remind over and over that the weather forecast leading up to the race doesn't really mean that much. What really matters is, will it rain when the track gets uncovered when it's time for practice on race day? In Foxborough, it started raining harder after that, and that's what led to a mud race. In Seattle, it did not rain after that, and that's why the track was rugged, but it wasn't a mud race. Which will we get in Philadelphia? Well, let's get to the clock part of that. This is a day race. The gates will drop at 3 p.m. Eastern on Saturday to fit a live NBC window on Saturday afternoon. Again, day race. And why does that matter? Well, if you look at the forecast, the key is that on Saturday, and that's the day that matters, it says showers early, becoming less numerous later in the day. So if this were a typical night race and the track could be left covered till 2 or 3 or 4 in the afternoon on Saturday, maybe the track could be uncovered after the rain had stopped. But in this case, it's going to have to be opened up much earlier because it's a day race. Watch for a change in qualifying and practice schedule, but either way, the track's going to have to be uncovered a lot earlier than normal, and that might make all the difference. As of Thursday, the track was built and covered. There's expected to be heavy rain on Friday, but by then the tarp will be there protecting the track. It'll be soft if it doesn't rain on Saturday, but full mud race, who knows? If you're Chase Sexton, you'd probably be okay with that. Maybe a chance for a do-over to make up points on Cooper Webb, which it seemed like would happen at Foxborough until it didn't on the last lap. Aaron Plessinger would love another mudder. Justin Barcia would probably like a do-over of his own. He was fast throughout the day, but couldn't get it going in the night show. Maybe it'll happen if it rains this time. Or maybe there's just too much talk about rain and things will turn out fine. There's 15 points between Webb and Sexton with 5 races to go. But honestly, storyline-wise, the 450 class is going to take a backseat to the 250s this weekend. There is a showdown East versus West, and the absolutely nutty 250 East campaign, statistically, is the tightest ever between 5 riders with this many rounds of a championship complete. Seth Hamaker and Tom Vial are tied at the top of the standings. RJ Hampshire is just 2 points behind, and Chance Hymas, who, until he won at Foxborough, had had a disappointing season, is now just 8 points out of the lead. And Cullen Park, quietly consistent, and then on the podium in Foxborough, is only 15 points out of it. And to that battle, a tornado is headed into the alleyway in the form of the 250 West Championship, where things are boiling over off the track between Julien Beaumer and Hayden Deegan. Don't forget, Beaumer said that Deegan had one coming at the next race when he left the podium at Seattle. That next race is Philadelphia, Saturday afternoon. Wow. How about the racetrack? Let's send it to Jason Thomas with an update because there will be some changes to accommodate what might be a mudder.
For the second time in 2 years, we visit Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And this week, we get another showdown race. Now, it's probably going to be raining on the weekend, so the SMX track crew has made adjustments beforehand to the original track map. The start kind of stays the same, and this first corner is going to be a really tight 180. And we'll see what they do with these rhythm sections. They've toned them down quite a bit, but I would expect them to knock them down even further. We all saw how difficult they were to get through last weekend, so let's see if they make any adjustments accordingly. They have taken out the triple jumps, so those now become double, similar to what we saw last week. I think you'll see jumps onto tabletop, similar to what the night program had to offer. And the whoops are now really small, and they come out of a left-hand 180. Now, if we get a racetrack that's not full mud, it's kind of an in-between, similar to what we saw in Seattle. This is a notable change from the original track map, because on the original track map, there was a double entering the whoops, and this is a completely the opposite direction now. But on this version, they exit a 180. Now, the difference is for riders like Chase Sexton, riders like Ken Roczen, Malcolm Stewart. Think about the best whoop blitzers in the sport. if you give them a double leading into the whoops, that's the best setup for them because they are allowed to build momentum over the double and they can carry that in through the whoops, and they're allowed to exploit the other riders that may suffer by blitzing, because what happens to riders who don't really like to blitz, or maybe they're just not quite as good at it, and of course I'm talking about maybe Justin Cooper and sometimes Cooper Webb, when they hit that double, they've got to figure out what to do with that momentum. Carrying it in is not really an option because they're not as good in the whoops. So they almost have to slow down to get to the entry speed that they want. So that's a big net negative for them. On this new version, exiting that 180, this is a coup for them because they can stay low in that corner and find a rhythm right out of the inside that will negate any momentum. And for riders who want to blitz, now they have to go through deep ruts on the outside and try to pick up momentum in a really tight corner. So it's a really small change on the track map, but in practical terms, it's a huge change. So the rest of the track is pretty basic. I'm mostly concerned with what the rain is going to do to the layout, and that's it for Philadelphia. So 250 shootout, 450 championship points up for grabs, and the weather is the biggest variable for the second week in a row.
Thanks, JT. Now on to the injury report, brought to you by our friends at Leatt, the science of thrill. In the 450 class, Cade Clayson will return to racing after breaking his arm earlier in the season. And you know most of the stories in that class. Hunter and Jet Lawrence out, Jorge Prado out, Eli Tomac out. But Tomac posted he was back on the motorcycle a week ago and hopes to maybe make it to the Supercross finale. He will definitely be back for Pro Motocross. Same for the Lawrences, same for Prado. There's one other 450 star who was hurting. That's Ken Roxon, has a bad shoulder and bad ankle, but his team indicated he's in for the weekend. 250 East, we say it every week, devastated by injuries. Max Amsty, Pierce Brown, Casey Cochran out, Matty Jorgensen out, Levi Kitchen out, but somehow back on the motorcycle after a brutal crash at Daytona. Cameron McAdoo out with knee surgery. Carson Mumford out after a injury at Birmingham. Chad Saltz, go to Road to Recovery to help out him. He has lost sensory and motor control below his T8 vertebrae. Get well soon, Chad. Devin Simonson back on the motorcycle after hurting his wrist in the offseason. Hopes to be back on the Club MX Yamaha next weekend in New Jersey racing. Jalik Swoll out with an Achilles tear. 250 West, Drew Adams, they have now confirmed he will not be back on the track until Pro Motocross. Broke his collarbone in his second Supercross attempt at Glendale earlier in the year. Anthony Burden out with big injuries, hip, pelvis, and back. Ryder DeFrancesco still out. He is back riding after internal injuries, but not racing this weekend. Other injuries that have been going on for most of the year. Derek Drake out with Lyme's disease. Evan Ferry, a torn Achilles. Talon Hawkins broke his femur in San Diego. Billy Laninovich has a wrist injury that now will require surgery, so he's out for the rest of the year. But he said he might come back and make another run at racing past the age of 40 next year. Ty Masterpool, sounds like he's going to focus on getting ready for Pro Motocross. He's out. Jet Reynolds broke his leg. Stas Robertson, a wrist injury. Josh Freese hurt his back in Seattle. Fractured a vertebrae. Done for the Supercross season. Get well soon, Josh. That would look like a bad one there in Seattle. And Robbie Wageman hoping to return to racing in Denver, but not back for this weekend. Yes, the injury report seems extra long when you have to track both 250 divisions. It is going to be absolutely wild to have two championship fights with some combustible personalities and ultra-tight points racing together and maybe in adverse weather conditions. What a weekend it's going to be in Philadelphia.